Welcome to the Dr. Diamond Podcast, where doctors learn from industry experts proven methods to grow their practices like the top 1%. And now your hosts, President of OfficeAutomated.com, Robert Barton, and the CEO of New Patient Group, founder of the Dr. Diamond Club, national keynote speaker, and featured in Dental Economics, Forbes, and CNBC, Brian Wright.
Welcome back to the Dr. Diamond Podcast. This is episode number 2. Here today we have Dr. Regina Blevins, and we're going to be talking about the future of orthodontics. And Dr. Blevins is a client of Brian and his company, New Patient Group, and he knows her a lot better than I do. So I'm going to let him take it away and look forward to the content today.
Yeah, I appreciate that intro, Robert. And, we have an exciting podcast today, the future of orthodontics, and bringing in somebody that is renowned as Dr. Blevins means the world to us. And, she's also a client of New Patient Group. So it means a lot. She's coming aboard as the lead clinical advisor of the Dr. Diamond Club. We have a great relationship. And just for the listeners out there, Dr. Blevins, the owner of Minnesota Orthodontics, she has multiple locations and is growing faster than what she'll tell you she might even be able to handle. They're having enormous success. She's currently the leading Invisalign teen producer in the world, an aligned faculty speaker, and also, like I said, the lead clinical advisor of the Dr. Diamond Club. So welcome in, Dr. Blevins. How are you?
I'm good. I'm surviving the Minnesota bitter cold right now, but doing well. As you know, at the end of the year is very busy in an orthodontic practice. So we had a very busy day today.
Yep, busy is good. And how cold is it there right now?
Minus 7 or 8, I think.
Oh my gosh, minus 7 or 8. And then yesterday in Houston, we were worried about the 45-degree temperatures. So,
oh, you're a lightweight.
Well, let's get into it. So I know the listeners are going to be excited to hear from you. Why don't we start off and just tell us more about yourself, your background, and some of the things that you attribute your success to.
Well, I've been in dentistry since I was 16 years old. I started at on-the-job trained dental assistant and went to dental hygiene school from there. Then on to dental school at the University of Michigan and orthodontic school at the University of Minnesota. So I've seen every aspect of how a practice runs, including covering maternity leaves for front desk people. So I have a unique perspective on the ins and outs of an office and how the inner workings happen. So I've seen it all, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And I've seen in the last 25 or 26 years how dramatically dentistry has changed from hand dipping x-rays to CBCTs and the like. But I would say the thing that I attribute my success to mostly is I'm persistent and I'm not afraid of change. I tend to step back, evaluate it, and if I think it's a good thing, then I embrace it. So I would say it's persistence above all else, problem solving and figuring out how to get something done.
Yeah, that's all really impressive. And I know, having you been a client of New Patient Group now for a while, one of the things I appreciate about you, and our team does too, is just, no matter how successful you are, you're willing to listen. And talk a little bit more, just briefly to the listeners out there, that how important it is that no matter how successful you are, to still take advice, still always trying to reach the next level, no matter how great you are. I think that's a great, great trait that you have that not many have, frankly.
Well, there's a quote that someone told me that I like to use in some of my lectures, and that is the most expensive thought is we've always done it this way. Because if you're closed-minded to innovation, you're never going to see how something might be done better or easier or more profitable. And I think that's a real stumbling block for some of today's doctors, because change can be uncomfortable at first. And then before you know it, the change becomes the norm, and you wonder how you ever did it that way before.
Exactly. That's a great point. You could, whether that's in the clinical world or life in general, that couldn't be more spot on. And I mean, I think that leads us right in today, with all the change going on in dentistry, orthodontics, et cetera. The consumer is really taking orthodontics and just the whole dental profession down a path that's really requiring a different skill set, from whether how you run your business, how the staff operates, et cetera. And I know you know that. And because today's topic is about the future of orthodontics, let's start off by talking about clear aligners and, what the consumer wants. And do you believe that clear aligners are where are they headed? Are they the way of the future? What are your thoughts there?
Well, I kind of have a little bit of a chuckle here and a tongue-in-cheek answer, because people often ask me if aligners are the future, and I'll say no, and they'll look at me kind of oddly because they don't expect the next thing I'm going to say, and that is they're not the future, they're the now, because the consumer's already spoken. It's what they want. And they want it faster, more comfortable, and more cost effective. And we, as a profession, need to listen to the consumers and try to embrace that. Because clear aligners, if you haven't mastered basic treatments with them yet, you're already behind.
Interesting. And I mean, that's because consumers are on the go. I mean, one of the great things, at least I feel, that clear aligners are able to do for an orthodontic practice, especially a busy one, like yourself, is it lessens the amount of appointment times your clientele, your patients need, to come in and see you. And it's not to hurt a doctor's feelings. Consumers are on a go, and they just don't want to come in as much as they may have in the past with braces, or just maybe a slower way of life, how consumers used to live. And maybe go into that. I mean, what are some of the ways that you handle your Invisalign appointments? How often do patients see you? And tell the listeners out there how you feel about all of that and what they should be doing.
Well, there's a whole spectrum of new kinds of patients. There's patients that just want to know if they can be treated, and maybe how much. And those kind of patients, we've adopted kind of a virtual sort of exam, where they'll come in and they'll meet with a treatment coordinator who will look at them and talk with them and see what their goals are, and even give them a ballpark range on a fee, so that valuable new patient consultation time isn't used with patients that are just in that kind of shopping or maybe budget planning stage.
Sure.
So in a respect for their time, we can get them in, and maybe in a 20, 30-minute non-doctor time when I'm maybe at a different office, and answer some of those fundamental questions. Yes, they are a candidate. And here's a range of fees, maybe $5,000 or $6,200 or whatever that might be. But at least it gets them into the office. We can make those appointments usually the day they call or the next day. And it's very important. The consumer wants to know that information now. And we don't really want to give it over the phone, because we want to build that relationship of them actually kind of seeing our physical plan, meeting a treatment coordinator, and things like that. So that's one innovation that we've done. Another one is a same-day consultation. If they're ready to start and they want to see a doctor, we try to take all the records that very first appointment. Even before I see them, they've had their scan, they've had their photos. We ask them to please bring any current x-rays with them. And if they don't have them, we plan to take them that same day. So when they are done, we're ready to go. We don't need a second appointment to discuss finances. We don't need a second appointment to discuss treatment. Unless it's a very complicated case, we can usually get everything handled in that first appointment.
And Dr. Blevins, I have a question concerning that. How long have you done it that way? Was that, did you start that early in your practice?
Around 2015.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so it's fairly new. Up until then, we would at least do the records and then a start, maybe a couple weeks later. Okay, but we're ready to sign the contract, and with the digital scanner, and we're doing indirect bondings or we're doing Invisalign, we're having them make the commitment that day so we can start processing their case. And then we have a software on the computer that draws up the contract, puts the numbers in, and if they're ready to commit, we're ready to start that same day.
That's one thing that I think that among many others that you do that I see, because we have the luxury of seeing a lot of practices, obviously, and the ones that, it's kind of sales fundamental 101. Every time in the sales world, every additional appointment you have, in many respects, lessens the chance that you're going to close that individual, really regardless of the type business you have. And in orthodontics, it's no different. If you don't have your system in place, set up to close that consumer day one, you're giving other orthodontists, or even GPs for that matter, that do Invisalign, because a lot of times the consumers don't know the difference, you're giving other ones a bigger chance to close them if they go to 2, 3, 4 for second, third, and fourth opinions. So you've got to be ready day one, and I see that as something that sets you apart from a lot of people, because a lot of doctors, they don't want to do it that way. They still want to do the 2, 3, 4 consult approach. And just talk briefly about why that does not work anymore.
Well, first of all, parents and adult patients or parents of kids, and even the kids themselves, they're busy. So they, believe it or not, see coming in as an inconvenience. So the more times they have to come in, you're already kind of, setting up a little bit of what I call bad juju. Okay. So if they come in and you explain things and you show them the records, you show them the value of why they need treatment. And, most of today's consumers are purchase now people.
Yep.
And if you accommodate that, they're very thankful. And many times they've come in saying, we've got 3 consultations set up. And by the end of their 45-minute appointment, they're ready to sign. They start their treatment, and they don't even go to the other 2.
No, that's really good stuff. And I think if a lot of doctors take that advice and they just shrunk their 2, 3, 4 consult approach to 1. And I know you and I have had many offline discussions about this. Just one appointment in itself is going to grow your practice. So that's awesome you do that. And that leads us into, we're talking about consumers, the future of orthodontics. And, there's a lot of companies out there popping up that, take the approach that, and these companies do well, that take the approach that not all consumers are searching for comprehensive treatment. They may be okay with what an orthodontist wouldn't be okay with, but, and again, the consumer is the one dictating the marketplace. So, because not all consumers are searching for that comprehensive treatment, I really think and I want you to elaborate on this, of course, but it really creates a wonderful opportunity for the practices that are willing to, do a little bit lesser of treatment, quote unquote, to meet what the consumer wants and maybe charge a lower fee for it. If you could go into more depth about how you handle that and your thoughts on that.
Well, I'm no different than most orthodontists out there. We were trained to do comprehensive treatment, to put our very best out there. But the consumer has spoken, and they don't always want to do that. A time investment, maybe they don't want to spend the time. Financial investment, maybe they can't or are unwilling to pay for that. My litmus test personally is if they want an enhancement, and I think that's going to better their health and not hurt them, then I've made peace with being able to offer some limited treatments. And I'm finding that probably the biggest area of patients that I'm finding that with is the parents in the practice already. because they already have faith in our office. We're treating their children, and they may have already had comprehensive orthodontic care, and they just want a little touch up, but they're almost afraid to broach the subject because they think that it's going to be 2 years and $5,000 or $6,000.
Right.
Okay. And also, there are patients out there that aren't having any functional problems with their bite. They're not having TMJ disorder. They're not having any problems eating, but they would like to look better. And I think there's a place for offering some kind of services like that. And, there are companies out there that are already doing it. And I rather see an orthodontist who's been trained, who's certainly going to, watch and try not to do any harm, being the one spearheading that.
That's interesting stuff. So, I mean, long story short, you're willing to treat those people as long as you think it doesn't put them in additional clinical jeopardy, I guess is maybe the best way.
Yes, it's not going to make their situation worsen or deteriorate, and we're going to make them better. Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, those cases that we do like that, we will keep it open-ended and say, when these goals are met and we've satisfied this relationship with you, our doors are open if you want any further treatment in the future. Now, of course, that's going to come at additional fee,
right,
and additional time. But, how many other practitioners in the medical field are like that? They don't always treat everything to perfection. We do what we can.
No, I think that's a great point. And I mean, again, the consumer in the end, the consumer is they're gonna say what they want. And, I think there's some doctors that are going to stick to how they were taught in the beginning. But I think ones like you that are willing to, make the adjustment to what the consumer's saying they want, as long as you're not putting them in clinical jeopardy, are going to come out ahead.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. All with informed consent. This is what I would recommend ideally. These are the risks, these are the benefits of comprehensive treatment versus limited treatment. And they make a choice in what they're gonna do.
That's important, because I think a lot of doctors out there may or may not do that. So, you're saying make sure that if you do what we're talking about and you treat a patient maybe not in the fullest extent that you otherwise may want to clinically, that they need to not only be educated, but they need to sign something that basically is agreeing that you've talked to them about that. Is that correct?
Absolutely. That it's a limited treatment, that benefits and risks have been gone over, and that if they change their mind and they want comprehensive treatment, this is the situation. It's going to be an additional fee, how much that additional fee is going to be, and how much longer it's going to take.
Well, that's really good stuff, Dr. Blevins. And let's talk about, just how long do you let patients go in between appointment times when they're in treatment? Consumers are, again, on the go. So how do you handle all that?
Historically, orthodontists used to see patients every month, okay? And I chuckle a little bit about that because it wasn't based so much on biology of what we needed to do, but that people were on a monthly payment plan. Okay.
Okay.
So you have, and there are still orthodontists that embrace that. So you have to let go of the idea of the appointment tied to the monthly payment. So if patients are put on appointment sequences, it has to be divorced from the payment plan. Okay. Right. They may have a monthly payment that they make and they're on auto pay or however your office sets it up. But their appointment intervals, even for fixed, can be 8, 10, 12 weeks apart, depending on what phase of treatment, like the initial unraveling of a case. Mm-hmm. Maybe you only need to see them in 12 weeks. Invisalign's classic that way because you can map out with when the IPR is going to be and things like that, exactly how often you'll need to see the patient. Now, younger ones I see on 10-week intervals because they've got eruption happening and things like that. But my adult patients, I can stretch their appointments between aligners appointments to as much as 20 weeks.
Wow, 20 weeks.
Very successfully. And you know what? I laugh about you saying they don't want to see you and it shouldn't hurt your feelings, because to tell you the truth, at first it hurt my feelings, because they would come in and they would say, oh, well, can I come in 28 weeks instead of 20 weeks? Okay.
Well, but you've gotten over that now. It doesn't hurt you anymore, right?
No, it doesn't hurt my feelings at all. And the other thing I found that, when we started going to these things, there's some reluctance that are they going to continue to pay? And they do. Consumers today are used to monthly payments. Okay. So you certainly, if you set them up on an auto pay or something like that, it just comes out of their monthly budget, and they just come see you when you tell them, and it's a completely separate entity.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say consumers are used to monthly payments, because that's about how 85 to 90% of all consumers make purchasing decisions, as if that monthly payment is low enough to fit in their budget. And I see so many doctors, like you said, they tie the appointment with the monthly in-house payment as an example. And having been in plastic surgery for so many years, where the default rate on payments was very high, now being in dentistry and orthodontics for so many years, the default on in-house payments and just payments overall is very low. So it's something that I completely agree with you about, that doctors out there need to let go of that, tying the appointment to that payment for that particular month. And I mean, what you just described, Dr. Blevins, I mean, we all know, the fee, the lab fee that comes with Invisalign. And there's a lot of talk about that, whether, be an orthodontist doing Invisalign or a GP that does it. But you just described a great way to instantly become more profitable, because every appointment less that patient needs to come in, you're making more money when you do a case. Talk a little bit more about the profitability side of it.
Well, that's interesting you brought that up, because I have an orthodontic business partner that we practiced together 20 years, and she's a numbers cruncher. And she had to be convinced, not just from the gut, but on black and white and print, that Invisalign in particular was more profitable. So we pulled numerous records and looked at how many appointments, what our fees were, and the profitability. And with our appointment intervals, Invisalign was twice as profitable as fixed appliances.
Wow.
To the tune of, if our fixed was $500 a visit, which is still very good. Don't get me wrong. That is excellent. We had Invisalign patients double that.
Wow. That's impressive, because I know we have the conversation a lot. It's hard to, doctors see what the lab fee is. They see the check that they're writing every month. It's hard because a lot of the money that you're talking about, you can't really put your finger on it. It's not a check that's coming back to you physically. So it's very hard to actually see it for a lot of doctors. But you hit it right on the head with the profitability and stuff that we try to teach doctors as well. So that's awesome. You guys actually sat down and mapped out all the statistics and actually proved to yourselves how much more profitable it actually is by, getting rid of the majority of emergency appointments and,
almost zero emergency appointments.
Right.
We see the patients, half as many times. And still, if you look at our end results, very high quality orthodontics is going out of our office. So it's cases that we're very, very proud of. So I don't feel that we're skimping on quality of patient care to do this.
Dr. Blevins, I so enjoyed listening to that. I felt like I was a listener. Of course, I was a listener, but there's so much wisdom in how you go about things in terms of looking at your business, crunching the numbers, deciding that there's a better approach, there's a better mousetrap. We're going to go in a different direction, even though you've been in practice for a number of years. And I just think it's very refreshing that you take fresh looks at a situation and decide to make a change. So with that, I hope that the listeners out there can take that kind of advice. Don't be afraid to change and move your business forward. Look at ways to be more profitable. That's what this podcast is all about, is talking to people that have insight with regard to these types of subjects. So with that, Dr. Blevins and Brian, we so appreciate it, and thank you for the listeners listening tonight, and we will see you in the next podcast.
Now, Robert, as long as you call me wise and not old.
So
well said. I will heed that advice for sure.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Well, I sure enjoyed that episode, Brian. How about yourself?
Well, it's interesting, Robert, because, needless to say, Dr. Blevins is extremely successful. Her practices are growing like crazy, yet there are still the vast majority of practices out there that don't operate the way she does. And for the listeners out there, guys, you're listening to somebody that is in the top 1% in the entire country from a production standpoint, and the leading Invisalign teen producer in the world. And she runs her business differently, though. And that is what, Robert and I on this show talk to you guys, all the listeners out there, about, is you have to do it differently. As an example, Robert, Dr. Blevins turned down, a company proposed a $270,000 external marketing budget or proposal to her organization that has multiple practices, and she turned it down.
I'm sure that was difficult because so many businesses want to address top line activities, top line being external marketing activities, where they need to be optimizing their bottom line activities, which is where the profit is. And what's unique about her is that she realized that. And yeah, I was very interested to hear the numbers of what actually happened after she turned that down, and then what ended up occurring with your company.
Well, and for the listeners out there, it's a mindset change to understand, again, that everything is marketing. So because she turned down, Robert, the external marketing proposal, she still is doing a huge internal marketing. From a standpoint, it's just she's focusing on culture and staff and constantly reinvesting in her people. And the numbers speak for themselves. In 2017, her Invisalign business grew 30%. For somebody that's already really good, grew another 30%. And kudos to her, because she is always trying to find a way to get better. And her revenue grew 60% in 1 year. And there is no external marketing on the planet that can ever come close to that type of growth. And it's just so much passion for listeners out there. You've got to do it the way a Dr. Blevins does it, and view your business the way she views it.
Well, I couldn't agree more. That's a lot of what our company is about, is helping people with their bottom line activities and automating many of those processes. And you've been preaching that forever with your new patient group company as well. So, this is just right up our alley.
It's right up the alley, and she is a consumer-driven person. It's amazing. She was able to revamp her new patient experience and get people started day one. And the days, for listeners out there, if you have an orthodontic practice that thinks you can have a 2 or more new patient consult to get people started, you will become, and you really already are, a dinosaur in the industry. It has to be, if the only thing you ever change about your orthodontic practice is to go to a 1 appointment new patient consult, get everything done in a timely fashion, you will skyrocket your growth. It cannot be 2 or more appointments. You will die in today's society and tomorrow's future with what consumers are demanding. It has to be 1 appointment, and she did it. And props to her, and the numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah, it's because there's no barriers to the consumer, and as more consumers are exposed to a 1 appointment experience at a say an orthodontist practice, the other orthodontists who are doing it the other way are going to be competing against a lower barrier to entry, simpler process for the consumer, and the consumer is going to gravitate toward that.
It's a great point. Where would you, if you went to 3 different orthodontists and 2 of them had multiple appointments to get you started, and then you went to the 3rd one and they said, we're going to scan you, give you a great experience, show you around the place, and present you money in an affordable way, and you can get everything going starting today, who are you going to pick? It's kind of obvious, yet there's still so many out there that just, for whatever reason, can't get it through their head that they need to go to that 1 patient, new patient consult.
Well, good stuff. I think that this was just a phenomenal episode, and it's a great example of what we talked about in the first episode where we're talking about how to run the business different, take a look at things a little bit differently, and then implement those things into the way the business runs. So this was a great example of that, and we're looking forward to the next episode.
Sounds good. I am too. Goodbye, listeners. We'll talk to all of you soon.